Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NextGen Planners podcast. My name is Dan, and I'm the head of community experience here at NextGen Planners. And today, I'm delighted to be joined all the way from the United States, across the pond, by Mr. Ross Marino. How you doing, Ross?
I am great, Dan. Thanks so much for having me on the show today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, man. I think obviously there's a lot of people in the audience who will know who you are and what you get up to, and of course I've been following you for a while, and we've got lots of mutual friends, and we've got lots of the same things we talk about all the time. So it just made complete sense to get you on the show. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do it. I know that it's morning for you as well. What time is it there?
It is 9 o'clock here, but I've been up since 3:30, so not a big deal for me.
Right, so this is afternoon for you then, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for taking your time out of the day. For anyone in the audience who doesn't know Ross, he is a financial planner and founder and CEO of Advisor 2X in the United States. And we're going to hear more about the amazing things that he gets up to today. And I've probably undersold him massively here, because there's so much more that Ross does and so many great thoughts and opinions that he has, and we'll hear about them today. But to kick things off, Ross, before we start, we always like to ask our guests what they get up to on a daily basis. So can you give us an idea of what a day in the life of Mr. Marino looks like?
Sure. Well, it starts usually around 4 a.m., which I think we this morning was a little early. It was 3:30 because I knew I had this really important podcast to record with you. But I rise early, try to spend a couple hours in the morning of think time, reading, writing, learning. That's my normal schedule. I have a family at home, so I'm a husband and a father. Have two daughters. My mother-in-law lives with me, and rotating pets come in. Right now, we have one dog, two cats, and a hamster that I'm pretty sure hates people. Don't really know where the hamster came from. It just appeared kind of a month ago, and not really sure what'll happen after that. But we have a hamster right now. During the workday, I kind of run two tracks. I try to divide up the days where Tuesdays and Thursdays are mostly financial planning days. I work with my clients. We have an RIA, registered investment advisory firm here. We have some advisors, and we have a team mostly working with clients on Tuesday and Thursday. And then other days, Monday and Wednesday, we do a lot of Advisor 2X work. And that's where we're working with different companies that help financial advisors manage their practice, grow their practice. Real heavy emphasis on the human side. So we do a lot of podcasts, a lot of recordings, and just a lot of sharing information, trying to connect advisors to the resources that'll help them manage their clients better.
Mm. Really good. I love asking that question, because it could go either two ways. It could go either people just tell us what they do as a day job, or they could literally start with, and as I asked you to, going into a day of the life of Ross, and you get to learn so much more about people. Like, there's no reason that I had to know that you've got a hamster, but we know that now, don't we? So it's all good. And you mentioned they're human, and that is something that is it's a trending topic in financial planning at the moment, and certainly across here in the UK and in the US as well. And I think the work that you do through Advisor 2X, but also the work that you do in your financial planning firm is known for that word human, because you are one of the, and I don't want to kind of over egg the pudding here, but I see you as one of the figureheads in our profession for kind of taking us away from that the time of the 1990s and maybe 2000s, where financial advice was seen as a product led thing, and it would be helping people make more money with the products and the tools and the investments and all the things that are out there. Whereas nowadays, as the work you've done and building on the work that other people have done all over the years, it's flipped now. It is, how can we get to know someone first? How can we understand their behaviors, their thoughts, their dreams, their desires, what they want to do with their lives, who they are, and then how can the money fit into what their life wants to be, basically. And it's a way, if you think about it, in my opinion, it should have always been. But we can that's with hindsight, isn't it? So how much more impactful, though, do you find that kind of human, I think you call it human first, is it human first you call it, human first financial planning? How much more impactful is that when you're working with your clients, rather than necessarily what we've been used to over the years, do you think?
It's really hard to compare the two because they're two different worlds. If I'm not human first, when someone comes to me, I'm usually gathering data and I'm taking notes and I'm listening only for a period of time to figure out what I need to do for them. So the focus and the emphasis is really on what I have, what I can do, and what I can offer. I tend to be the one that gives the answers to the questions in that traditional financial advisor setting. What I don't do in that environment is I don't really get to know the client that well. I don't understand what makes them tick, what really matters to them, why they really came in to begin with. So when you shift that conversation to the client, now you can actually connect with that person. The impact that you can have on their life is way deeper because now you understand why they're there. The impact on me as a financial planner, way more significant because I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and the impact of my advice and how I'm helping that person, way more gratifying. And even just the whole team. When you have a team at your office, when you're at lunch or we're at our break, we're talking with each other about clients and about what went on and how we help them. It's really transformational from an office standpoint, a team standpoint, from the advisor standpoint, and also with the people you serve.
Mm-hmm. And if we think about, because I was talking about this actually with Mary yesterday. When I say Mary, by the way, I mean Dr. Mary Bell Carlson, everyone. I'm sure that podcast will be released by the time this one is, so go and listen to that as well. Really fantastic episode with a very cool person. But it's something I've talking to her about is it actually makes it easier to demonstrate your value as a financial planner and to think about your value as a financial planner when you start focusing on those, like you said, those human first elements of the transformations that you make in somebody's life, the real impact that you have, rather than simply trying to communicate your value through the tools, so through the pensions or 401ks or whatever it is that we call them in the US, or through the investing and that kind of stuff, because we all know now that that isn't the valuable part. The valuable part is like you said, understanding where someone wants to go and helping them get there. And I mean, personally, there's nothing else that I would rather be doing. I mean, I'm not a financial planner, I'm qualified, but there's nothing else that I'd rather be doing than that, because it's just such a rewarding thing to do when you shift that mindset away from the tools to the people instead. It really is.
Yeah, I think when you look at what people value, so instead of just thinking, what value do I bring, which is a common question. And if you work with a consultant or a coach, they're going to make us answer those questions. And that's instinctive to us. But what if we shift that? And what is valuable to the client from their perspective? What value do we bring to them? And they're humans. So what are they going to think? They want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want to know that we have their best interests at heart. These types of questions and these types of outcomes don't come from my depth of financial knowledge or how much jargon I can use. They come from me asking questions, listening, and getting to know them. So when we kind of shift our perspective of what does the client value when they come to us and what do they value in a relationship, it's a little easier to shift that focus.
Yeah. And something that you've said a few times in that, what you were just talking about there, and people who are watching will notice underneath Ross's name it says shift, and something that I said at the start was shift, and there's a reason we're using that word or that verb so much, is because that is something that you're heavily involved in and that you've launched recently in the US. It's actually in March, so by the time this podcast is released, it probably will have been. So you'll have to let us know from the future how it went. I'm assuming it'll be very good. But you do have an event in March in Texas called Shift. And it's one of the most amazing lineups that I've seen for a conference in our profession. It is just incredible. There is almost nothing, in fact, I don't think there is anything at all about products or investments or anything like that on the lineup. They are all just people who are talking about what we've just been talking about, the behavioral aspects, the psychology of financial planning, the deeper conversations, the relationships, all the things that we would used to say are soft, and I hate that expression, soft skills, because they're not. They are just the skills that you need to be a financial planner. So can you tell us a bit more about the event and where it came from and kind of how you managed to put that amazing list together? Because I am so jealous that I'm not going to be there as well.
Thanks so much. A few years ago, we launched a conference called the Retirement and Longevity Summit. It was the initial shift where I wanted to do something where we looked at retirement, but not just from a financial or a number standpoint, but what it meant to have a fulfilling retirement, and then also longevity. It's great to have a bunch of money saved when you go into retirement, But if you die 3 years into retirement, money didn't do much good for you. So we wanted to help people really kind of shift their focus on how they approach retirement and what it means from an advisor to help those people. Well, the pandemic put a pause on it for a couple of years. Then we brought out the conference last year, first year. It was successful. People loved it. But what they loved the most was all of the sessions that were human focused. It was the sessions that talked about how we work with people, how we understand people, how financial planning impacts their day to day in their lives. That's what people loved most. Now, I wanted that as a theme, of course, at the Retirement and Longevity Summit, but I didn't really go all in on it. And a few people, we were just sitting around the table on the last day there. A guy named Brian Portnoy, who works with Neil Beige from the UK with Shaping Wealth, and a few other people. And we just talked about, we just got to go all in on this. Let's just go for it. So we spent a couple months thinking, how do we rebrand this and create a really human focused type experience? And we came up with the word shift. And it's not just meant to shift my perspective. It's the shift within the industry. It is the shift in the foundation of financial planning to focus more on the person. And then we came up with human first financial guidance. And here's what that means. We don't minimize portfolio management. That's still important. We don't minimize financial planning. Obviously, that's important. But before I get to those two steps, I have to connect with the person first. I can't just see them as a prospect or a client or a widow or a small business owner or some label that I may give that person where all of a sudden in my head, I'm connecting the dots of this is what this person needs. I don't want to categorize them. I want to get to know them. I have to connect with them as a human first and understand really what matters to them because people are similar, but they're never really the same. Once I'm able to do that, now I can offer financial guidance. And we wanted the word guidance instead of advice because once you know where someone is at in life and where they want to go and what matters to them, I can help guide them. It's much different than just being the answer man and giving them advice. So came up with that theme. And I just spread the word and started talking to people saying, this is what we want to do. We want to bring everybody together for a conference. And the list of speakers, it's humbling, Dan. I had people reaching out to me that I would think there's no way they're going to respond to an email from me, right? There's just, I could email Carl Richards all day long. He's not going to respond to me because everybody emails Carl Richards. He's one of the original thought leaders in this area. He's coming to be a keynote speaker. And then other people were just sending me emails and messages on LinkedIn. And I'd see the message and think, I have been dying to connect with you. And you actually reached out to us because people are spreading the word. So it's not what we did. It's just the community has grabbed hold of this and said, let's make this thing happen. So great list of people. We're really excited. And speaking in the future, man, the event was so good, Dan. It was awesome. And next year, it's going to be in Orlando, Florida, in March as well. And we hope you can come and a lot of people from the UK can join us as well.
Yeah, definitely, man. I will be there with, we say in the UK, I'll be there with bells on because that is something that is like very much in my focus because the quality of people there is just, I mean, what's the URL just so people can go and have a look at it, by the way? It's
Human First .live, LIVE, humanfirst.live.
Yeah. So, I mean, whilst you listen to this podcast, maybe go along and just have a look at, because whenever this is released, the lineup will still be there, but go and have a look at the lineup. I mean, some of the names in there, like Carl, for instance, like Brendan Fraser, like all these people, just incredible what the work that they're doing. I think as well, it really does kind of hit home, with people who are perhaps just qualified as financial planners, or they've got the technical skills, so like they've passed their qualifications or whatever it might be. In the UK, you have to pass a level 4 qualification, which is called a diploma, and then technically you can go out and you can start to give financial advice or financial planning to people. But what a lot of people find is that those exams do not teach you at all anything about the human first stuff that you've just been talking about. They don't teach you how to negotiate. They don't teach you how to ask great questions. They don't teach you how to listen well. And something like this that you've designed there with that event is trying to really kind of plug that gap of people who really don't know where to go to get this kind of stuff. It's all out there. We just need to focus it in one place. And if I'm thinking, obviously, we are thinking a little bit into the future here. So if you can think of your future self after the event, and you can look back and say, wow, some of these messages were amazing. What do you think those will like? What do you think some of the best things to come out of that event will be? Because obviously we're looking into the future here, but what kind of things from previous events, and what kind of things are you expecting for the best messages to come out of the event, would you imagine?
It's a good question. We have people coming that are all over the spectrum. So we have some advisors that they've been in the business 2 or 3 years. They're just building their book. I know one advisor who is a speaker, comes from the therapy world. Fantastic guy, Ed Combs. He just opened his practice, and he's coming and he's speaking because he has so much value. And then there's the people who are a little more mature, like myself, where we've been in the business 30 years. So you have a great spread of experience and knowledge and even types of practices. But what the shift does, and this is what I hope everybody takes away from it, is the shift in the conversation is really a moment in time when we're listening to a client or we're answering a question, and we realize that we have to shift the conversation and we have to ask a question to dive deep in order to connect with the person, to understand them. We have to shift that conversation. Recognizing that moment in time, I think, is the number one takeaway that I hope everybody gets. And then the second is, some people, they may not be real comfortable with, the soft side, as they say. When you said soft skills, I thought, no, foundational skills, because I'm with you, right? You may not be comfortable asking questions that you don't know the answers to, or you haven't done that before. I've done this for 30 years. I'm married. I have children. I have lots of life experiences. I'm okay asking questions I don't know the answer to. However, for someone who's newer, they may not. So we just want to start them off with two simple questions. If you have a prospect, here's two questions you can start with. It's as easy as it gets, and it's probably what you're doing anyway, but you formalize it. Question one is, how did you get here? Some people may say, what brought you in today? Why are we meeting today? When you ask that question, they're going to tell you what's going on. That's what I need to know. They're going to offer some information, but don't be tricked by this information. It isn't the story. It's just data that they thought I needed to know. And they're describing it in a way, and this is from Neil Beige again, where they're giving us this narrative, and they're saying things and asking us questions that they think they're supposed to say, but it's really not the issue. So they're going to tell us what's going on. But then the second question is what's actually going to open up the conversation. And that's when we say, how did you get here? Or in other words, what's the backstory? What led up to you coming in today? After they've told you what's going on, now you get the data. Sometimes people talk for 10 minutes straight when I ask them how you got here. They go back to their childhood, which I want to get there eventually. Didn't know we'd go there right off the open, but they do anyway. And they walk through and they start describing, here's what's going on, here's what I got here. And then all of a sudden, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling. You just launch. And they will start talking and you take notes. If you can just get in the habit of finding out what brought you in today and how did you get to this place, it's going to open up the conversations. And over time, you'll get better and more insightful and understand more deeply and be able to make a bigger impact.
Yeah. It's so much more powerful, isn't it, than kind of, if we could call it the traditional way of doing it, where clients would come into an advisor's office and then the advisor would pull up a PowerPoint on the screen and say, so here's who I am and here's why you should listen to me. Like if I'm sat there as a client, I'm gonna fall asleep straight away. Whereas if you think about how you've asked, so we've actually had someone on the podcast called Lauren Stansel. I don't know if you've ever heard of Lauren. She's from a financial planning business called Yeski Buey. And she's a fantastic financial planner, and she was telling us when she came on the podcast that her first question that she asks everyone is, tell me the story of X. So if it was me, it would be, tell me the story of Dan. And I mean, I'm a Northern English person, so I hate talking about myself. So for me, that would probably be about a 10-minute thing. Whereas she said that sometimes these things can take over an hour, sometimes 3 hours and stuff like that, where people just do not stop talking because they've never, ever been asked that question before.
Right.
Never, and they're so worried. I mean, let's get into the head of someone who's going to the financial planner for their first time. They have no idea what you're going to ask them. They think you're going to be asking them about their money and their investments and all that kind of stuff. And then when they turn up and they actually get that question first, that is so refreshing for them. And you can see the surprise and the delight on their faces because they just did not expect that at all. And they've never been asked that question before. It's so powerful.
Yeah, and we find that a lot that when you ask people these questions, they will often say, I've never been asked that question before.
Yep.
But their impression is, or their expectation is, they're going to come in and I'm going to tell them what I'm thinking and here's what you need and so forth. But we turn the tables, we shift the conversation. We ask them, what are you thinking and how are you feeling? And I think, I've got my coffee cup, right? So
Yes.
if it's a Zoom meeting, they see the coffee cup and I show it to everybody. And if you're just listening on the podcast, my cup has 3 words: think, feel, do. That's the process. We have to ask someone what they're thinking. We have to ask them how they're feeling. Now, some people may have reservations, wondering, should I really go there? I can tell you from my experience, when I ask either a prospect or a client what they're thinking and how they're feeling, in my experience, Dan, they answer me 100% of the time. No one has ever said, well, I don't want to get into that, Ross, or, I don't really want to tell you what I'm feeling right now. Said by no one ever. No one's done that. They want to know. And of course, they know it's genuine. I'm not checking a box off. They know I'm interested, or hopefully they get that impression. So when you do that, people will open up. They do want to talk about what they're thinking and how they're feeling. And that's the way I get the information and the insight that I need in order to connect with them and help them.
Mm-hmm. And this is why, like, when I see people, for instance, who are a bit skeptical about this kind of stuff, and I don't, we allow people to be skeptical, but this is when I see people getting a bit kind of worried about it, almost looking a bit like therapy, financial planning. But when you think about it, it is like it's a therapeutic process. I've been in financial planning meetings before where it's almost felt a bit like marriage counseling or something, because you're asking them questions that they've probably never been asked as a couple. They've probably never spoken about this between themselves before. They've probably never thought about it in their own heads before. And then all of a sudden you're asking these questions. So the analogies between financial planning and and therapy or psychology or whatever we want to call it, they're sensible analogies, because it almost does feel a bit like a therapeutic process for some people. What's your experience been of that, of working through that almost therapeutic process with people?
If I'm a salesperson, I don't care. I just want information on what makes them tick, what they value, so I can sell them a product. So for people that are really resistant to this, or if they're in the sales world, it's probably not a good fit for them. But as an advisor, if I actually want to approach it from a human first standpoint, to understand who this person is, recognizing they may be similar to other people I work with, they're never the same. If that's valuable to me, then I have to take a therapeutic approach. So I've had lots of people say, you're kind of like a psychologist. And I have a standard response, which is, well, let's not confuse me with an actual professional in that world. I use psychological principles and I understand some of the basics as it relates to financial planning, but don't confuse me with a qualified professional in that world. And everybody laughs because they understand it. But really, if I want to connect with you and build trust on the human level, then there's no doubt it's going to have a therapeutic process built into it.
Yeah. That's very true. I did a podcast recently as well with, this is my common thing. I talk about previous podcasts on current podcasts, but I did a podcast with somebody called Santiago Burridge from a company called Lumient, which is a tool in the US. You might have heard of it, Ross.
Yep.
And it's in
There'll be a
Australia
shift.
as well. Yeah, amazing. And one of my favorite quotes from him is, "If you know what you're selling someone before they come in the room, you're a salesman. You're not a financial planner." And that is so. I mean, I loved it when he said that. I almost gasped with how much I agree with that. And that is, if we could draw a line between thinking of what financial advice used to be like and what financial planning is today, I think that is almost where we're getting to. That line is that difference between products and sales, and really connecting with someone on a human level, which is obviously what you do. We're going to talk about think, feel, do. You kind of stole my thunder, because I had a good question lined up about that as well. But like, instead I'll kind of ask you, like, where did that come from? Like, where did that process actually come from? Was it through working with all of your clients beforehand? Did you find it somewhere, or where did that process kind of originate from? Can you remember? That's the first thing.
Well, I'll tell you, the coffee cup came from Ashley Quam, who will be at Shift.
Right.
She is a therapist who is now specializing in working with financial planners. she's married to a financial planner. And her story is after 10 years of being married to a financial planner, her husband would come home and describe a situation without all the details. And she would think, well, I know what to do there and I know how to handle that. So she eventually realized, hey, I've got to do this. So she just brought out some merchandise and I saw the coffee cup of Think Feel Do and thought, that's actually the process on my website. Got to have the coffee cup. Actually got to have two. So I ordered two of them and I use it every day. But if you go to our website for Transitus Wealth Partners, the process is a 4-step process. I've already alluded to all of the steps in it. And this is what happens when someone comes in. I'll delineate between prospect and client. In general, people reach out to us because something happened. Life happened. The splash page on our website is life happens, plans change, we can help. Because that's what motivates most people to reach out to a financial advisor. And we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. So when they reach out, we give them the 4 steps. First is what's going on, which we talked about, and how did you get here, right? That's the story. That's how we understand where they're at. Once we have a foundation there, and yes, this could take 30 minutes, Dan, it could take 60 minutes. It takes a while. And really, the more they talk, the more I type or the more I write, because some of the information, it may not seem relevant, but there's a reason they're sharing that with me. So just because the data may not stick out in my head, there's a reason they share that. And people will say, oh, I'm rambling, or is it waffling? I think you say, right? And you can, I'm waffling. Well, I don't know why I told you that. And I think, actually, we have to figure out why you told me that. There's a reason, but we know that it's in there. Once we go through that, then we go to, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? This came out of when I transitioned my practice probably 7 or 8 years ago, after going through a series of life events and realizing this whole long-term goals-based financial planning. When do you want to retire? What do you want your life to look like in 20 years? When life happens, I don't know what my life's going to look like in 20 days. I can't think that far down the future. And if I do, I might get scared. I might start crying because I just had so much trauma in my life. But what I do have to do is make certain decisions because life happened. So in order to do that, let's focus on right now. Figure out what happened, how you got here, the situation. What are you thinking? Want to know their thoughts? How are you feeling? Then I can guide them. But it's more of taking a focused approach to right now. Here's what's going on, whether it's a prospect coming in or a client you've had for 20 years and all of a sudden life happened. Same thing. Let's drill down right now and figure out what we need to do today.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And it really does recognize what consumers come to financial planners for. It is that transitions. It's whether it's the formal transitions of big life events like death or divorce or things like that, but even sometimes even just moving careers or something like that. Like they're huge transitions in someone's life where they leave a big impact, and like you say, life happens. I love that, the tagline, by the way. What was it? Life happens, plans change.
We can help.
Yeah, we can help. I love it.
Yeah, and I'll throw in, Dan, the bigger the transition, the more traumatic or dramatic the change, the more uncertain the future just became. So how insensitive is it of me to ask someone about their goals or something 20 years down the road when their whole future that they had in their brain just went poof? Yeah. It's not just a detour off the road and then I'm going to get back on this road. It's this road ended. That's it. I am now going in a different direction and I have no idea how it's going to play out. When that happens, it's intense. So we're not going to talk about 20 years down the road. We're going to talk about what do you need to do right now. We're going to prioritize and figure out what's important and what's urgent, if anything.
Yeah, and this is where, if we wanted to make an argument for the power of financial planning, as in like the proper process of financial planning, that's where that really starts to come in, because like you said, plans change, and the power of financial planning is not actually this recommendation to put your stuff here or whatever it is. It's the ongoing thing of saying, okay, well, we'll come back to this every whatever it is, 6 months or every year, just to make sure that the plans aren't changing too much. But if they do, the financial plan is dynamic and it can move and it can flex with your life. And that's the difference between, again, financial planning and simply just making recommendations on what someone should do with their money. Because let's be honest, we can let computers do that nowadays. Like, there's no reason why we need to do that element. The computers can't compete with us on the human stuff and the understanding where someone wants to go with their life. It just cannot. they don't have empathy and they can't understand. So well, they might do one day. Um, you mentioned there, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the business there, but I want to get inside the mind of those people who we kind of already have, but obviously for the transition side. But like, I always love asking this question because everyone has, although they might have similar kind of client personas that they work with, it's almost a different every time I ask this question. But can you just take us inside the mind of those clients and like what are they thinking, what are they feeling, of course, and also like what transitions do you help them generally kind of go through, and what kind of things do you help them achieve?
I think the most common is going to be around retirement. So our
Mm,
our typical prospect that comes in, they're plus or minus 5 years from retirement. So maybe late 50s to late 60s. It's quite a change for a lot of people. It's exciting for many people. It's scary for many others. That shift of when you go from working and saving money and adding money to investment accounts to all of a sudden no more saving regularly and now you're withdrawing, it's intense for a lot of different people. So I think you're going to see that the retirement is going to be the most common transition that they come in. We do work with people that went through a divorce or lots of widows. We have a lot of women clients. It doesn't mean that men aren't widows. They're just not as many of them. So we have a lot of women who are widows recently, or maybe it's gone on for a while. And everybody processes that different. But because, again, it's a traumatic change and it's a dramatic change, it's going to take a long time before you transition to your new world or your new normal, as we call it. So the idea is to find out where they're at, certainly understand their story, and figure out really what happened inside their mind. So for many people, it's a loss of identity. They were a person one day, and here's how they viewed themselves. I'm a father, or I'm a mother, or I'm a husband, or I'm a wife, or I'm a business owner. And then all of a sudden, right after that, they're just Bob or Mary or Susan or Tim. That's an identity loss. And that's hard for a lot of people. And the uncertainty that can come from just the fact that the road you were on ended, not it's bumpy or there's some curves I have to navigate or a quick detour and jump back on. That sounds great. That's not life, right? That road ended. To go to another direction, there's a lot of fear that comes with that, a lot of anxiety. Any type of change, humans, we love status quo. So when that happens, it's tough for people to handle.
mm. Yeah, it doesn't. So I'm working with someone at the moment. Um, he's actually launching a podcast on this called Humans versus Retirement. Great guy, Dan Halett, fantastic guy,
Oh, yes.
and
Yes. Follow him on
you,
social media. Great
I
guy.
know
Yeah.
Dan.
He should come
Um,
and speak at Shift.
I should. Dan, if you listen to this, there's your
Yes.
invitation.
He's on my
I've
list.
got you, I've got your invitation from Ross. There you go, mate.
Yes. At least a
So,
free pass.
but that is so true. I've also spoken to somebody in the past called Polly Zialonka as well, and she's actually a retirement psychologist. So she looks at what the brain actually goes through when they reach retirement, and there's a big, massive list of things that the actual brain does go through. But also the identity piece is enormous. Like you said, they're no longer, like you said, a business owner or whatever. They are just Jim. And just Jim sounds like it's a bit of a negative thing, but it's actually not. It's just Jim with a different kind of a different profile behind him. But I completely agree. That's why, for instance, if we don't understand this properly, like you said, people go back to doing what they were doing beforehand, or people go off and make silly decisions, or people go off and because they don't understand who they are anymore. And the work that you're doing, I'm so glad that the people that you work with, for instance, that you understand this kind of stuff, because you can kind of spot those things as they're happening. Whereas I don't think in our profession just yet we're at the point where we really understand how much of a transition retirement actually is. It's enormous.
Yeah, and I'll give you a couple words. I'm working on a webinar right now that we're going to launch in April, and then I'm going to break it up into little pieces for our YouTube channel. And it's about reimagining retirement, but there's two words I'll use in there. Because retirement is such a dramatic change, and frankly, until we go through it, it's really hard to understand how we're going to think and feel on the other side of that time where we retire. So the first step is to kind of assess where you're at and then begin to rethink everything. So it's not the 10, 20, 30-year plan. It's just the rethink. So if I'm Ross, retired, well, what does that mean? Well, who am I? what do I really want to do? First, I have to kind of get my bearings on that other side of retirement because different people react differently. So that's rethink. Once I feel like I've got a grasp on, okay, I got an idea of what I want to do next, I go from rethink to reimagine. Now, as I've entered retirement, now I can start thinking, what would I want to do for 5 or 10 years? What really sounds interesting to me? What gets me excited on Monday morning or Sunday morning? Doesn't matter. That's when you start to reimagine. But I see a lot of teaching where everybody goes straight into reimagine. What do you want? This is the long-term planning. That's important. We do want to reimagine, but my life changed. The context of my life changed. I'm now someone who's retired. I can see the world differently. I have different capacities. I have more freedom. Let me rethink of what my life is like right now. Then I can move on to reimagining. And that's a process we're going to try to help people go through.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I could talk about this kind of stuff all day because that's just it doesn't really get the airtime that I think it deserves, and you're rightfully giving it that airtime. I want to ask you something on what we last time we spoke when we were kind of coming up with ideas for this podcast. You described yourself as an accidental financial planner. And I think, well, from if I'm thinking this is what it means, is that I mean, like everyone in the UK. I think we did a poll in our community once of how many people would say that they, in quotation marks, fell into financial planning. It was ridiculous. It was like 87% of people say that they fell into financial planning, like as in they didn't intend to be a financial planner, but they are, and they love it. What is that? Is that what you're referring to, or what do you mean when you say you're an accidental financial planner?
Yeah, slight little shift. So when I was in ninth grade in grade school, one of my birthday presents was a copy of Money Magazine. So yes, you're a geek when somebody gives you a business magazine for your ninth grade birthday. And I loved it. Also had in high school a subscription to Psychology Today. Did not know that financial planning was investments, money, and psychology put together. Always fascinated by this stuff, love this stuff. I really was a closet geek. I was a football player. I was a wrestler. I wrestled in college. So I looked like kind of a jock, gym rat type guy, but loved this stuff. This was my first job, age 21, became a financial advisor, loved it, eventually said, I've got to go into financial planning. And shortly after that, the accidents kind of accumulated. I moved to a city called Wilmington, North Carolina, to open a financial planning practice. My wife and I moved here. Within 30 days, I had a back injury. I couldn't really leave my house for about 6 years. I spent most of the time in a room over my garage on the floor with pillows trying to do financial planning over the phone. Couldn't stand much, couldn't sit. You would ask, how do you build a practice that way? I have no idea. But people would just seem to call. One person would refer somebody else. And just by random, what seemed like accidents, I would get enough clients literally to make it to the next quarter because I was a fee advisor. So when people ask, how did you grow your business then? I just kind of shrug and just say, people just called. And fortunately, it eventually worked out. Well, then I got out of the house. I got a little better. I started building the practice. And I decided, okay, we're going to build the practice. We're going to grow the practice. And then I had a couple of life happens events in my life. My wife and I adopted a couple of girls. The youngest one turned out to have special needs. We didn't know that. It took 13 years to get an accurate diagnosis. And at that same time, my wife also fell ill. So I found myself in a situation where I really couldn't do much outside of the normal workday. I had to be home when the kids were out of school. I had to pick them up from school, didn't go out to eat with clients, didn't go out and have coffee with them, couldn't do lunch dates. The schedules are disrupted all the time. So when someone says, what kind of marketing did you do? I said, I didn't do any. Literally, that's not a joke. I didn't do any. But fortunately, someone would refer somewhere where else, and people would keep coming. And little by little, the practice kept growing and kept growing. So when people ask, how did you build a book? How did you build a big practice? I'm like, they just happen to come. And I recommend it to no one. It is not a business model. I wish I had time to do that stuff. I finally have time now. So the April webinar that I talked about, that'll be the first amount of marketing, I think, since 2004. I did a dinner for some people 10 years ago. and absolutely nobody signed up with me. So there, I'm just going to act like that didn't happen. But before that, I think it was early 2000s. But somehow the practice grew. And frankly, I just didn't have the time for it. I had to cut things out, and you just hope that people come, and enough came. So it worked out okay.
Yeah. I love the warning that you give, by the way, because I will also repeat that warning that you have been I don't want to say lucky, but I think missing something there is the fact that you do a great job, and that's the power of referrals and recommendations in our profession, is because what we do is so led by trust. It's very rare that people will go to a financial planner unless they have been recommended to do so by somebody else or something like that. Like, it's still the same nowadays. So all the other tools that we have out there are amazing, and there's some really cool things you can do nowadays. But ultimately, the referrals, and I think they'll probably always be up there with nearly number one, if not in the top three of the ways that financial planners get clients, just because of the trust. But you kind of sold yourself short a little bit, because the reason it worked is because you do such a fantastic job. That's just the best way. I always say to people, the best way to get referrals is to just do a good job, and that's just the way that it works. Like, you just do a good job, and it does eventually. It trickles down and it works along. It passes on to people. But it's a really interesting story, though. It wasn't actually what I was thinking. It was meaning, but it's still good. But also, I think just one more thing I want to touch on is again, last time we spoke, you kind of mentioned this phrase of answering like a financial planner, and I think that's something we want to get away from doing. But can you just kind of give us? I mean, by the way, for the audience who is listening, I put answering like a financial planner in quotation marks because it's a phrase. What does that mean, though? Like, what do you mean when you say answering like a financial planner?
So when I become a certified financial planner or a qualified financial planner, I'm younger. I've gone through a level of study and I understand the business. I am so excited, Dan. Just ask me a question, flip the switch. I have so much knowledge. I know what needs to be done. I know how to do it, but it's a trap. When someone comes to me and they ask me a question about how should I save for retirement, or I'm wondering what to do with this money I inherited, my instinct is to answer like a financial planner. And that means I will go into what I do, how I do it, and I will ramble. I will waffle on and on and on. This is what is instinctive to me as a financial planner. People don't want that information. There may be one person once in a while who wants that. They trick us. They make us think that this is actually important because we get excited and we talk investments with this person. But people are asking for things other than all the details of how I do the job. So when someone asks me a question, I want to answer and address what they asked, but I don't want to go into here's what we do, here's how we do it. When I do that, I basically become answer man. And I start sharing all of this information and this jargon. And the more I talk and answer questions, the less trust the person has in me because they get overwhelmed. So I need to take that question, shift the conversation, and then go straight into the process. How'd you get here? What's the story? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? When I shift the conversation and they start talking, I'm not answering a question like a financial planner. I'm asking a question, like a therapist. Right? So there we go. And I'm not prescribing from that, but I'm asking the question because people need to feel heard and they need to feel understood. And that's how I'm able to gain some insight so I can help them. So don't answer like a financial planner talking to another financial planner. Here's what I'm doing with this client. Answer like a human being who is actually curious on what the person is going through and has empathy for whatever that situation is. That's how I'm going to be able to connect with them and ultimately help them make better decisions.
Yeah. It reminds me of a fantastic piece of advice that I was given when I just qualified and I was going through my first, like, doing meetings with clients and stuff. And I would always rush to solutions straight to like almost straight away. So people would ask me a question, and I would do exactly what you just said there. I would rush to solutions. I would rush to conclusions. I would say, oh, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do that, and like I could almost, when your hand was going down with the trust, I could almost see the life and the trust leaving the client's eyes. Like I could see it going down, and I couldn't understand for so long why it wasn't connecting. Like I could just couldn't understand, and then someone said to me, you don't need to rush to solutions. You just need to listen. You just need to use both of your ears, listen to what somebody is saying to you, and react like you would expect a human being to react when you tell them something. And I could never ever, like, everything else changed from that perspective, from that moment, because you start to realize that humans are, we're listening beings. We're not so much solution beings. We like to listen.
Yeah, and I really think if you look out 10 years, there'll be a conference. You'll be having a conference in 10 years, and you're going to have a panel of successful advisors up there, because we as advisors love to hear from other advisors who are successful, right? What are you doing? How are you doing it? We want to know what they know. That's what we'd love to hear. So it's a good question to ask, what are those people doing 10 years from now? The better question, Dan, is what are those people doing today?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the long game. When you're in the financial planning world, you have to think long term. That's what we do. So I want to know, what are the most successful advisors 10 years from now doing today? What I think they're doing is shifting the conversation. They're trying to connect on the human level with someone, understand how they're unique, and it infuses into their marketing, where they have micro marketing to different groups and different types of people. They understand individually what really makes someone get excited. Lumient is a great example of that. Follow their prompts, follow their information that is then captured, and you can go back to and refer back to, and you'll see how some things change over time, but a lot of them, they're spot on. That's going to give me a deeper relationship with that person that is unique from my other clients, because I've had a process to actually do that. The people that are going to, I think, dominate this business and make the most amount of impact, I'm not talking about the revenue. I'm talking about making a difference in the world and the lives of people, running a business that will be profitable. Those people today, they are shifting the conversation. They're trying to connect on the human level. That's the future of the business. And that's where I think we're ultimately going to go. And that's how we're going to impact the world.
Yeah, it truly is. And just a final thing before we move to the questions that we ask everybody at the end is, we've kind of talked about this a few times, but like, when you think about this, and when we think about the conversations that we're having today about human first financial guidance and that kind of stuff, and moving away from this idea of products and investments being the thing that we actually offer, how far has our profession come? Like, I mean, firstly, do you call it a profession? And also, how far do you think we have actually come in the past 10, 20 years that we're now really starting to push this stuff forward?
I think we're accelerating the change. So part of the motivation of doing Shift with the people that worked with me at the beginning, like Brian Portnoy, Susan Bradley, Mary Bell Carlson, who you just had on as a guest, worked very closely. We spent an hour and 20 minutes on a Zoom call yesterday, strategizing for next year. When you talk to those people and you see their perception, because I'd rather take theirs, they're seeing that it is an acceleration, as if the industry has hit a tipping point, where now we're not a subset of, oh, well, those are the advisors who are touchy-feely and they love to talk about what people think and how they feel. We're now being seen that this is the foundation of financial planning now, or it's at least shifting to that. So the adoption is increasing. And now you see in our world, the CFP board, the Certified Financial Planning Board in the US, just made financial psychology 8% of the test. A few years ago, 0. That's a tipping point. So it's now becoming part of the profession, where I'm pretty sure they're not going to turn around in a few years and say, gee, let's take this out. Right? So they've done it. And this is, I got the textbook, because you got to have the textbook. If you're a geek, what does your office get you for Christmas? I need the textbook from the CFP board. So yeah, #geek, right? So they've put it in there, but it's now foundational to learning financial planning. I don't know how you go back from that, or backpedal a little bit. So I think the tipping point is on. It's been increasing, and now it's going to be wide open, and you're going to see a lot of people jumping in and putting more emphasis on this.
Yeah. I agree, and the acceleration I think is clear by the amount of interest that is in this area and the fact that so many people. I know that this episode here will be very, very popular, and that gives me hope because people are interested in this. They're talking about it. It's interesting actually because we actually put out a poll today when we're recording this podcast on social media saying, I'll read it out for everyone so you can understand it. Is in quotation marks, an understanding of psychology is important in true financial planning. And then the options are agree, somewhat, agree, or disagree. And 81% of people who we've polled so far, and it's only been going for 3 hours, have said that they agree that an understanding of psychology is important in true financial planning. If you did that, 10 years ago, I can't imagine what the figures would have been like. So when you look at stuff like that, I think that shows how much we're shifting towards this really being an important part of financial planning nowadays.
Well, I want to know who the 19% are that didn't check agree. And are you actually a financial planner? Because I'm having a data issue here all of a sudden, right? Is this scientific, Dan? Who are these people?
I can send you their names if you want. No, I'm only joking. I won't do that. No, I would definitely won't do that. So don't worry, everyone. But I think it's yeah, I agree with you. I think it's maybe just a bit of I don't want to say education. I don't want to sound patronizing, but it is just about. It's almost like trying to just bring people to this side a little bit more and saying, if you think about it a different way, this is how you can really impact someone's life. Because like you said, you can't go back from it once you realize that. The final question that we ask everybody is. One that's actually one of the most popular ones that I ask. So I can come up with all these amazing questions. And then the one that actually leaves the most impact on a lot of people is, what would you recommend our audience consume in terms of a book or a podcast episode or an album or a movie or anything? What has really changed? What piece of content has really changed the way you think about things? And I always give people a rule of one. And then they always bring 3 anyways. So don't feel bad if you've got like 3 books that you want to recommend. But what would you say to our audience that really change your way of thinking?
Well, we have probably 10 to 12 partners for Shift and 40 speakers. So let me read the list for you. Thank you, Matt. So I can't play favorites. So I'm going to give you a disclaimer before I mention people. And that is, one of the motivations for Shift is people will connect with different organizations, different education tracks, different software tools, depending on where they are in their career and what their personality is. So I may love one thing today that 5 years ago wouldn't have had a lot of value to me. Part of Shift is to bring everybody together. So as you get exposure to these different places of where you can learn and where you can grow, you'll find something that's a good fit right now. So it's going to be situational. What is situational for me right now is going to be Shaping Wealth. Brian Portnoy was the creator. I've mentioned Neil Beige, who's a co-founder, a couple of times. Brian's book called The Geometry of Wealth, it sits in my backpack that I carry with me. So I read it at home. Why can't I just leave it at home and read it there? I don't know. I actually carry the book, right? And I highlight it at different times and I open it up. So the book was the foundation of what they brought out with Shaping Wealth. And they have a program called Outsourced Chief Behavioral Officer, OCBO. That is an educational and content platform that you can sign into. I listen to it literally daily. This morning, I listened to Neil Beige twice. Yesterday, I spent about a half hour actually doing my learning time. So this is part of my learning track right now. Very powerful stuff. Number 2, or I'll say my other number 1, would be the Financial Transitionist Institute. That's a lady named Susan Bradley. I co-authored a book with her called Shaping Change. She really has insight and has a wonderful designation. It is global. It's in the UK, South Africa. It's in India. Certified Financial Transitionist really gives you insight into how people process change and transitions in life and how we can help them as financial planners. So I'll go with Brian Portnoy's organization, Susan Bradley organizations. That's my number 1.
Fantastic. Yeah, I could concur with both of those. We have Brian across here quite a lot actually in the UK. I've never actually met him, But
He was just there, I think, last week,
he,
actually.
he was just here last week meeting up with the Shaping Wealth crew, and we've never actually really got involved with the Shaping Wealth crew, but I think now is about the time that we do it because the
Oh,
stuff that
yeah.
they're doing is incredible. So I mean, if Brian's listening to this, which he might do, I don't know, but yeah, we'd love to get you on the podcast, Brian, at some
I'll
point.
make that happen. Him and Neil. Have you had Neil on?
I think we might have had Neil in the early days of the podcast, right back in deep dark 2018 or 2017,
Oh, you need
something.
you need
So
him back.
we probably need to refresh. I think we could get like the whole triumvirate of because of course there's Joy at Shaping Wealth as well, and she's fantastic and does amazing work as well. So
Yeah, Joy's in
yeah.
Germany now. So Joy Leary, and then they added someone who just focuses on health, Dr. Phil Perlman, and then the announcement today was Hal Hirschfield, who is probably the I think the global leader on making decisions with your future in mind, long-term decision making. Hal Hirschfield, people refer to him as the best. I see it all the time. They just announced he's part of Shaping Wealth today. So yeah, you've got 5 people to interview, Dan. It's gonna be awesome.
It's going to be incredible.
Line them up.
Yeah. I should say that Ross does a fantastic job of getting us guests on the podcast as well. So if people are thinking,
promoter out there, how about that, right?
well, mate, absolutely fantastic. Sorry if anyone can hear my dog barking in the background as well. It's a good job we're at the end because somebody's just tried to knock on the door and now she's barking like crazy. So it's probably a good time to end the show. Ross, we do always like to give the last word to people to say a big thank you for coming on the show. So can you tell our audience where to find you, how to connect with you, and where to find out more information about Shift and all that kind of stuff as well?
Sure. I'd focus on humanfirst.live. That's going to be the website for the event, and it'll be the website for the event going forward. We'll also have information to connect with us as we roll out a lot of social media. On YouTube, search Advisor2X or just my name, Ross Marino. We have a lot of content. We put out maybe 1 or 2 videos a week with guests that we interview. So check us out on YouTube just by searching my name, Ross Marino, or go to Twitter. If you're on Twitter, Ross__ Marino. So actually 2 underscores because somebody got 1 underscore and they don't even use the account. So what are you going to do? So I am 2 underscores.
That reminds me of a few years ago when we had NextGen planners and it was the perfect amount of characters. And then we changed our date of birth on the Twitter, and then Twitter blocked us from the platform and deleted our account.
Oh, no.
And now I think that NextGen Planners has been taken over by somebody else and they don't even use it. And it's so demoralizing. I can't believe it. So I think we've had to take an E out of our name or something. It's so hard. But yeah, go and connect with Ross. He's a fantastic guy. Go and catch up on all the things he's doing because some of the stuff are incredible. And I mean, I must say a big thank you to you, Ross, for coming on today. Hats off for all the amazing, incredible work that you're doing alongside all the other things that are going on in your life. It's amazing to see what change you're making in our profession. So if I could just say, please keep up the work, the good work, and you're welcome across here in the UK, of course, whenever you want to. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, Ross.
No, my pleasure. I look to seeing you guys in person one day, and really anybody from the UK who wants to come to Shift, I give a free guest pass to anybody who wants to come because it's expensive to come all the way over here across the pond. So reach out to us if you want to come. We'd love to have you as my guest at Shift.
Amazing. There's an offer for everyone. Thank you so much, Ross. So that was Ross Marino on the NextGen Planners podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can share it on social media channels. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. What's the other one? Twitter and YouTube and TikTok. Sorry. And you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and on our YouTube channel. And you can find it on nextgenplanners.co.uk as well, which is our website where you'll find more information about our community of over 1,000 amazing financial service heroes who are doing this stuff that Ross is talking about, which is amazing. So get involved with the conversation. But also we have training programs to help you become a financial planner, and we have training programs to help you launch your financial planning business, help with your marketing, all sorts of different things. So go and check it out, nextgenplanners.co.uk. And one more thing is to just please, if you can, just leave us a review to let us know how we're going on. And also follow the podcast so you'll get notified every Friday. It tends to be on Friday mornings when we release our new episodes, so you won't miss a thing. But for now, thank you so much to Ross for joining us on today's show. Thank you guys for watching as always, and listening, of course, as always, and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye.